Let's dork out on some insurance. I'm Mike Varicki with Customers First Insurance Group, aka the Insurance Dork. Today I want to talk about a type of business insurance that gets overlooked all the time, especially by newer business owners, contractors, and people who think their general liability policy covers more than it actually does. And that coverage is personal liability insurance. You may also hear it called Errors and Omissions Insurance, E&O, or in some professions, malpractice insurance. This is the coverage that can help protect your business when someone claims you made a mistake, you gave bad advice, you missed something important, or did work that caused them financial harm or property damage because it was done incorrectly. This is one of those coverages people usually do not think much about until they need it. A lot of business owners carry general liability insurance because somebody required it. Maybe it is your landlord. Maybe it's a customer. Maybe it's part of a contract. Maybe someone asked you for a certificate of insurance and you were told you needed general liability. So they buy it, check the box, and assume they're all covered for business stuff. That's where the misunderstanding starts. Because general liability and professional liability are not the same thing. General liability is meant for things like bodily injury, property damage, certain personal and advertising injury claims. So if someone slips and falls at your office or your operations cause certain types of damage to someone else's property, that's where general liability may respond. But if the issue is that you gave bad advice, made an error, missed a critical detail, or performed work incorrectly, that's often a different conversation. That is where professional liability may come into play. Professional liability is designed to address claims that your business caused harm because of a professional mistake, negligence, bad advice, or faulty work tied to your services. That can mean an accountant makes an error in the client's financials. An insurance agent fails to recommend an important coverage. A consultant gives advice that leads to a costly result. A designer or engineer makes a planning mistake. Maybe a contractor performs work incorrectly and it creates damage later. A doctor, lawyer, or financial advisor makes a professional error. Now, every policy is different, so the exact coverage depends on the business type, the carrier, and the policy wording. But the big idea is simple. This policy is meant to protect you when someone says your expertise, your service, or your work caused them harm. And one of the most important parts of that protection is not just whether the policy pays a settlement or judgment, it is the defense. Because even if a lawsuit is weak, exaggerated, or completely frivolous, you still have to pay to defend yourself. And legal defense can get expensive in a hurry. A long, drawn-out lawsuit can seriously hurt or even bankrupt a small business that's already operating on tight margins. So the question is not always, will I lose a claim? Sometimes the better question is, can my business afford to defend one? Who should be thinking about this coverage? The obvious examples are professionals like insurance agents, accountants, lawyers, doctors, financial advisors, consultants. Those are the easy ones because people already associate those industries with mistakes in advice or service, and they're usually required to have it. But professional liability is not just for people in suits and sitting behind desks. A lot of business owners have this exposure and don't even realize it. One of the biggest examples is contractors. This is where I see confusion all the time. Why contractors get this wrong? A lot of contracting businesses are family businesses. They take pride in their work. They care about doing a good job. They're hands-on. They're not trying to cut corners. But good people can still make mistakes. Maybe someone's tired. Maybe they're rushed. Maybe an employee misses a step. Maybe a small detail seems minor in the moment, but turns into a much bigger issue later. A good example is a roofer who installs a new roof, but misses a piece of flashing. At first, nobody notices, but over time, water gets in. That leak goes unnoticed. Then months later, there's a major interior water damage. Now you have damaged drywall, insulation, flooring, paint, maybe even mold concerns. Suddenly, you're staring at a claim that could be tens of thousands of dollars. Let's say it causes $40,000 in interior damage. A lot of business owners assume their general liability is going to cover that. But if the damage happened because of faulty workmanship, general liability may not respond the way they expect, and neither will your homeowners. This is one of the biggest misunderstandings in commercial insurance. General liability is not there to guarantee the quality of your work. So if the claim is basically saying you did the work wrong and that caused the damage, you may need professional liability or contractors E&O coverage. Depending on the type of business and the way the policy is written, that is a big deal because one missed detail can turn into a very expensive uncovered claim. The real risk is not always bad work. It's human error. A lot of business owners think we do great work. We are careful. We never had a problem. My employees know what they're doing. And that may all be true. But insurance is not about whether you mean well. It's about what happens when something still goes wrong. Once you have employees, deadlines, stress, customers, subcontractors, and multiple jobs going at once, the possibility of human error is always there. And human error can be incredibly expensive, especially when the damage shows up later and the customer points back to your work, your advice, or your judgment. That is why professional liability matters. It's not because you expect to fail. It's because you understand that mistakes, misunderstandings, and allegations can happen in the real world. If you're not sure whether this coverage matters for your business, ask yourself a few simple questions. Does my business give advice or recommendations? Does my business provide specialized services or expertise? Could a mistake in our work cause financial loss or property damage for a client? Do I have employees whose errors could create a claim? Would it hurt my business financially if I had to defend a lawsuit? If the answer is yes to any of those, professional liability deserves a serious look. Because one of the most common reasons business owners end up uncovered is that they assumed another policy handled it. Professional liability insurance is one of those coverages that often gets ignored because it's not always required upfront the way general liability is. But just because nobody asks for proof of it does not mean you do not need it. If your business gives advice, performs specialized work, or could be accused of making a costly mistake, this coverage may be one of the most important parts of your insurance program. Because even a frivolous lawsuit can cost a fortune to defend. And for a lot of small business owners, the legal bill alone is enough to create a major problem. So take the time to think about what could go wrong in your business. Not just the obvious stuff, the missed detail stuff, the bad advice stuff, the one small error that turns into a big claim stuff. This is where professional liability comes in. Thanks for watching The Insurance Dork, where we make sense of insurance without putting you to sleep.